Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Isolation Interviews with me, Rob Harkavy. Now, it's no secret that despite increased awareness of mental health issues, the incidences of suicide and attempted suicide in the UK remain stubbornly high. Very few of us, I don't think, have been untouched by what I think we can justifiably call the suicide epidemic. And so to try and make sense of what is a blight on society, I'm thrilled to be joined by the founders of a wonderful charity, SOS, Silence of Suicide, Yvette and Michael Mansfield. Yvette and Michael, welcome.
Hi, Rob. It's great to
Morning.
be here. Thanks for having us this morning.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. So the two of you founded this charity fairly recently. Can you tell us why?
Well, there's a simple reason which it should have occurred to me before, but it hadn't. One of my daughters, 5-6 years ago, committed suicide,
Oh, gosh.
and it was a bolt from the blue, as everybody says, because those around somebody like that, you're not aware. You should have been aware. Afterwards, you feel even more guilty that you were not tuned in enough to recognize how bad it was. And so at the funeral, I had some words to speak, and I used the word suicide all the time. And people said, in hushed tones, you're speaking about the elephant in the room. You're actually mentioning the word. Anyway, once I realized that I had said something which other people thought was actually important to them to have it said. And then out of that, because Yvette had lost a close friend of hers as well to suicide, we thought we'd start something different, which was detoxifying the taboo on the word itself. I know it was a crime. Obviously, I'm a lawyer, so I'm very aware of the fact that it was, and assisting in suicide still is. So it began with that, and the idea was to bring people together. We're not acting as experts, we're facilitators, Yvette particularly, in which we get people who've, we can't do it so much now, committed suicide in the sense of attempted to commit suicide, thinking about it, talking about it, and so on. And once they got talking together, they provided the crucible of change.
Yeah. So, interestingly, yesterday I was interviewing a 21-year-old activist who is an activist for wonderful young women, actually, for better sex ed in schools and also for mental health. And I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked her. There's a lot wrong with this country and a lot needs to be done. And yet we live in a country with free education, free healthcare, a fairly decent welfare state, less war than ever before, the pandemic aside, less disease than ever before, pretty comprehensive equality legislation, and so on. So why do you think, against this largely improving backdrop, mental health issues are rising rather than falling?
This is the problem when we talk about education. We forget that education should include, from a very young age, teaching children the meaning of resilience, the meaning of self-worth, building confidence, and teaching them to respect other people. Because I think if we can build that resilience and that belief into them at a young age, then they're going to be better able to cope with all the various horrible things that life can throw at us from time to time. And there just isn't the emphasis on that, Rob. That is the truth of the matter. Mental health, yes, we're talking about it more. Suicide, we're talking about it more. But what are we doing? Yes, what are we doing about these figures? How are we helping our younger generations to be able to cope better as they start growing up and face some, terrible challenges? I mean, going through puberty, that in itself is enough to absolutely blow your mind. You don't know who you are. You're coping with various different emotions and feelings and physical changes. It's a hugely difficult time, and yet there is absolutely no support for that, it seems to me. We're very keen as a charity that we get into the school place, very young years, sort of like primary school, and start teaching them in the right way, obviously, how to value themselves and value others. Yeah.
I know this might seem slightly incongruous, given I know, Yvette, you lost a female friend, and you, Michael, lost a daughter, but 3 in 4 suicides in the UK are by men. Why do you think 3 times as many men take this sort of final tragic step than women?
I think there's no doubt from our experiences that men traditionally find it harder to express themselves, to talk about their emotions. I think there is still this general opinion within society, and maybe it's unconscious, that a man is the alpha male, the man is strong, therefore the man is meant to not meant to be impacted by, you know, any kind of mental health issues at all. Everything's meant to be fine. And even if it's not, they're not meant to express that. We've got to change that. Gender should not come into this discussion at all. What should come into this discussion is the fact that we're all humans and we're all susceptible and we all have our struggles, and we've got to be encouraged to talk about that regardless of gender.
Yeah,
I think I'd just like to extend something that Yvette said, pick up. It's the earlier question. I'm thinking that one of the reasons I think why there is less resources and less understanding devoted to this area is because, you know, I'm getting on in life, and for most of my life, mental health has, like suicide, is regarded as an area to be fearful of. I mean, well, in my youth, there used to be a mental asylum. That's what they called them. Asylum. People who had, they were seen as deviants. They were seen as, you know, they've got to be, as it were, contained. And we've only just begun to scratch away at all that and replace it with, you know, this understanding that we're talking about. So I think that's another contributory factor.
yeah,
Absolutely. Also, Rob, if I can just add as well, we know the figures for men, and especially middle-aged men, are highest, and that seems to be a continuing trend. But we also know for the last figures for 2019 that were released by the ONS that there is an increase, albeit small, but there is an increase in the rate of suicide amongst young women, so 16 to 25. So we need to keep an eye on this. You know, we really need to keep a very close eye on it. But it's about approaching it holistically, you know, and if you like, not labeling people, not grouping people. We have a problem with suicide. Okay,
yeah.
stop now. Let's address it. Let's talk about it. What can we do?
I was going to avoid politics, but I have to just put on record that I think the government is derelict in their duty to in not funding better mental health provision. And what's so frustrating is that it's actually quite cheap. Paying a therapist for an hour costs a fraction of dialysis or something like that. It's actually not that expensive to provide the provisions. So why they don't baffles me. Now, to the charity, what message can you have for people who'll be watching this? And I know just from the feedback we get on Outnews Global and our social media that I've got a lot, we're not unique. A lot of people out there because of the pandemic are struggling. So they're the Samaritans. There's all sorts of places people can pick up the phone to, but if they want to pick up the phone to you, what can they expect? Because it's a big, big first step.
Oh, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. We realize, you know, the brave step that people have taken when they pick up the phone, and you know, it's huge for them. But thank goodness they do, because without doubt, people say, "Gosh, I feel so much better. I've shared something that I've never been able to talk about." That the burden that lifts off them is absolutely amazing. So, what can they expect of an SOS volunteer? Okay, so first of all, they are trained to be understanding, be kind, and above all, be compassionate. Yeah. And even if they don't understand someone's situation fully because they've not experienced it themselves, it's to learn from actually that caller. And that's what we do. It's a constant learning curve. You know, callers teach us so much. And thank you all for doing that, because that's how we continue to evolve. But I mean, we're friendly, we're compassionate, and it doesn't matter how many times you phone us. If you need us and you need to keep talking, we'd rather you pick that phone up multiple times than speak to no one and things continue internalizing until essentially something horrible, you know, can happen. We don't want any of you at that point. That's what we're here for. So please pick up the phone. It takes a lot of guts, okay? It does. but you're going to get nothing but support and understanding when you phone SOS.
Yeah.
A couple of additions,
Yeah.
if I may. One is that when we had our physical meetings, we did have the same approach where people were helping each other. We can't quite do it in the same way. However, we want to make it clear we're not pejorative. We're not judgmental. We're not here to say don't or do. We're here to do a second thing, which I just want to mention, slightly different to the Samaritans who support us on a lot of our work, which is we're not just a brick wall. So you don't ring up and just bounce off us. We are going to ask, not intrusive, but a few questions that might help the person reevaluate what it is they're about. And it doesn't have to be right on the edge of, I'm about to commit suicide. There are those, but there are many, many more who are a long way back. And we prefer to catch it, nip it in the bud, in the sense of making people alive. We're all isolated. We all need a little bit of hope and a little bit of inspiration to get off the ground each day.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to add here, Rob, actually, that the one thing we don't do, and we're just like the Samaritans in this respect, we don't give advice. Okay, that's not what we're here for. We're here to talk things through with you and try and give you the tools to help yourself to move forward. Okay, so we don't give advice, and as Michael quite rightly said, we don't judge. So you can phone us about anything. We're not here to judge you. We're here to have a conversation with you. And sometimes, people might just want to chat because they're feeling, oh God, I'm so lonely, or there's no one else to talk to, or I'm fed up with talking to person A, I want to speak to somebody else. So, so everyone is catered for. Yeah.
Anyone who's watching this can now see there on the ticker at the bottom of the screen all the contact details going past. Also on every page of this website, outnewsglobal.com, there's a purple square advert. Click on it, folks. You'll be taken straight through to the SOS Silence of Suicide website. But for now, it only remains for me to say, Michael and Yvette Mansfield, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for the amazing work you're doing. So on behalf of all our readers and all our viewers, I wish you both much love, luck, and happiness. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thanks.